Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together. Live from the spiritual realm, it's the God and Satan podcast. Thank you. Thank you. Wow. That's a lovely welcome. Thank you very much. Thank you. You can all come again. Thank you. Fabulous. What a lovely welcome.
What the hell was that?
What was what?
The clapping and that Jewish thing.
The theme tune, isn't it?
Theme tune? Very Jewish.
Oh, we said we'd try and create a bit of atmosphere.
Did we? I don't remember that.
You don't remember that?
No, I don't remember that. I remember the talk of the theme tunes, and I suppose you just
said,
got ahead now.
We got it down to 4.
Whatever you think.
We narrowed it down, didn't we?
Whatever you think.
Well, it's not what I think is right, is it? We narrowed it down to 4, and I sent it across to you. Sent it across to your PA. Didn't hear anything back.
She didn't tell me.
This is part of the problem. I seem to be doing all the legwork.
Oh, don't be ridiculous.
You didn't send anything back, and I said that was my favourite.
You're so precious.
Yes, I agree. It's a bit Jewish. I agree, but
It's more than a bit Jewish.
We're not representing just
Very
one
Jewish.
religion, are we? We're
Exactly.
Multi-religion. Well,
People think
I don't
this
know
is a
whether there's a
Jewish
word
channel.
for just one religion.
Like we're
A society
celebrating
of
Woody
one
Allen's
religion. There probably
birthday.
is. I don't know what it is.
Correligionist.
But we're not that, are we? We're representing all religions. You not agree?
I agree, but it seems to be a bit overly Jewish.
Oh dear me!
And,
It's unbelievable.
well, it is. It is what it is. It is what it is.
Oh.
I'll have to speak to Katherine.
Yeah, could you?
She did not send me a short list, and that's the first.
I find that
time
hard to
I've
believe.
heard that Jewish song.
Not a Jewish song. Anyway, shall we start?
Yeah.
Shall we?
Yeah, let's crack on.
Let's start.
Come
So
on.
this is the first of what we hope to be many
Hope so.
get-togethers here with myself, God, and my how do I describe you?
Colleague.
No, you're not a colleague. You're not a colleague.
Well,
are you?
we work in the same industry, don't we?
Yeah, we work in the same area, spirituality, etc. I agree with that, but we don't work on the same side. Like if you had to, let's say you had a Pepsi salesman and a Coca-Cola salesman, they're not colleagues, are they? They're
Acquaintances?
yeah. I mean, acquaintance. That kind of conjures up images of us going for coffee together, which clearly
We have.
we don't do that.
We went
don't
last
go to
week.
conferences
We
together.
went last week.
It's I don't really know how to describe you.
Friends?
No, you're not a friend. I don't know. We'll have to park that one. But anyway,
Brilliant.
we're here with myself, God, and Satan.
Lucifer.
In the same spiritual room for the first time in an awful long
Alone
time.
in the same
And,
spiritual room.
I
There's
suppose this
no
is
audience.
this is a representation of society, like physical society, with all of these different bodies coming together into one. Well, what I'm trying to say is just everybody seems to be having a podcast, don't they?
Everyone's having one.
Everybody. And literally,
And
and
the
their
dog.
dog.
And the
their
dogs.
dog. In some cases, they do include their dog
Matt
in
Baker.
podcasts.
Monty Dawn.
Everyone's got them. Even Katherine Ryan's got one. So we thought, well, if she, not just specifically Katherine Ryan.
Yeah, specifically Katherine Ryan.
Because everyone's entitled to have one.
Is she?
But if someone like Katherine Ryan can have a podcast, then why can't
Anyone.
God and Satan?
Absolutely.
And
Anyone can have one.
I'm sure you Satan have got similar requests from people. Me
never had
via
one request.
prayer, you via some kind of midnight worship
No need to say it like
session.
that, is there?
But
In prayer, you've been asked, have you?
no, I have been asked.
You've
I
been
have been
asked.
asked.
Specifically, you've been asked, God, please do us a podcast.
No, I mean, I know not specifically, dear God, can you do a podcast? But like, God, can you vocalize and explain some of the things that happen? And I just think a podcast is a perfect way for that to happen. Really.
Well, I just want to go on record to say that never has anyone during a midnight sacrifice in a stone circle or dark abandoned monastery ever asked me to do a podcast.
And that's fine.
It is.
That's fine.
It is.
Can I just before we get into this, can I just mention one thing? And I don't want you to take it really personally, but
that sounds
is there
quite
anything
ominous.
you can do about there's like a reverb on your voice?
My voice?
Yeah, your voice.
Well, it's my voice.
Now I realise that. Yeah, and I realise you've got a persona to represent.
I'm the devil.
And yeah, no, I get that. It's just that on a podcast, it does sound kind of like we've put one of those kind of voice effects on your voice.
All right.
I'm not sure it adds to the realism of it.
Oh, so what would you prefer? Joe Pasquale? Oh no, so now get on your nerves.
Okay. Well, obviously, if there's nothing you can do about it, there's nothing you can do about it.
It's my voice.
We've got what we've got.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks for bringing it up, though.
Fine. So let's get into it. What I thought we would do to start with is let's give out some details of the type of stuff we're going to cover. You'll see on the scrolling text at the bottom, we've got an email address that we're going to use for any questions or any comments. We really appreciate any comments. That's really the only means of contacting us at this point, other than prayer. But obviously, prayer is something that ultimately we can't really show on the podcast. We can represent it, but we can't really show it. So it would be great if you could send some emails in, as I say, with questions or comments, and we'll try and get through as many as we can. We thought today what we would do is maybe shine a light on the process and the things that happen once your physical body dies. I've been asked so many times in prayer, God, what happens to me when I die? Well, let's try and explain that process as clearly as we possibly can.
So we're not talking about celebrity chefs today, then?
Eh?
Only the last time we spoke, we talked about highlighting the ridiculous amount of celebrity chefs there are. And then we were going to do that Baywatch sketch about Ainsley Harriott rescuing his sister from the water feature at Chelsea Flower Show while still managing to prepare a cold meat salad.
No, this is unbelievable. I sent an email to you last week. I know we had the conversation about doing that, and we will do that at some point, but I just thought, we should use the first one, maybe just set the scene. I sent you an email on it. I can't believe this.
All right, okay. Calm yourself down. What email address did you send it to?
Your email address. The one that you've always had. LuciferJucifer@AOL.com.
Well, that explains it.
What do you mean?
I stopped using that email address, let me think, in 1985.
You what?
Yeah, it's I am Satan, all one word, I am Satan @gmail.com. Yeah, I've been using that quite a few years now. I did send out a communication to all my contacts, so you should have been notified.
Just bear with me a minute. Hang on a minute. I do wonder sometimes why I bother having a PA, especially a work from home PA, inverted commas, very much in that phrase, as I imagine. Probably right now the television's on and salvage hunters or find it, fix it, flog it,
Wheeler dealers,
shed and buried,
homes under the hammer.
currently playing. HG.
Hello.
HG.
Hello.
Yeah, it's me.
Hello.
Big G.
Yeah, hello, Big G.
I'm here with the devil,
Mm-hmm.
and there seems to be a bit of a mix-up with his email address.
All right.
Because I've been sending emails to the Lucifer Jucifer address.
No, it's the wrong email address.
What do you mean?
It's the wrong email address.
Well, you never told me that.
He told you.
Yeah, I may well have got the email, but I expect you, in your position as my secretary, and other things, to tell me that. I've been sending him emails to Lucifer Jucifer for the last 24 years.
No, that's the wrong email address. Wrong one.
Well, I know it's wrong now.
Yeah.
Doesn't really help me, does it? Can you, going forward, can you just make sure that, if communications come through, you just make sure I'm up to date?
Yeah, I can do that. I can do that.
What are you doing anyway?
Why?
It's just that you took a long time to answer the phone.
I'll have a right to go to the toilet.
You have got a right to do that. Of course you have.
Yeah.
Everyone's got a right to do that.
They have.
Querying.
Yeah,
it took a long time.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Calm down.
All right.
Jesus.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Au revoir.
How long's he had a French accent?
Oh, don't start me on that. Bizarrely, he apparently read complete works of Albert Camus and came in the Monday morning.
He used to be a Brummie, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. He did used to be a Brummie, but yeah, he came in on the Monday and decided he was going to speak in a French accent, and that's been the case ever since. But that is the least of my problems with him, I can tell you. But anyway, let's just crack on, shall we? Let's crack on. Come on. So let's start right at the beginning. Let's just clarify. There are essentially two realms. There's a physical realm, so everything you do on Earth, that's part of the physical realm. That was obviously life granted to you by yours truly. And then there's the spiritual realm, and you will enter a spiritual realm once your physical body and your physical life has ended with death. But do be aware, these two realms, the spiritual and the physical, they don't overlap.
Well, they do sometimes.
All right. No, I realise that.
Yeah.
I just wanted to keep.
You're going to talk about ghosts?
No, wasn't going to talk about ghosts.
Possession?
No, wasn't going to talk about possessions.
All right.
But okay, if you want to talk about possession,
it's quite an important topic, isn't it?
You got any anecdotes? Who was the last person you possessed?
I possessed it's an interesting one, this one, because I was going through quite a phase of listening to operas, and I decided on a whim, and it was nothing more than that. There was no real research, but I decided to possess a barber in Seville, which, I don't want to make a mockery of it, but that opera really had an effect on me. So I decided to go to Seville and looked up the first barber, and it was, ironically, and I'm not making this up, ironically it was someone called Pedro. Pedro Aldavar, his name was, and he was a young chap. He was only about, I think he was 27, and I possessed him for a couple of weeks.
Yeah, and I know we weren't going to get into this, but you've kind of started down a path now. So you possessed Pedro for a couple of weeks. So what happened?
I mean, to be honest, it was relatively dull. I think people probably have a view of possession. The Linda Blair thing, floating in the air and doing all sorts of nonsense with yourself. None of that. No vomiting. Nothing. In many ways, very dull. I basically got Pedro to shut the barbers for a couple of weeks because I didn't have a clue how to cut people's hair. And we basically just toured Seville and had a really good look round. Went to the bullfighting, which was much more entertaining than I'd ever imagined it would be. We listened to music, watched films. His girlfriend was rather nice, so obviously spent a good deal of time with her. And then after 2 weeks, I thought, you know what, let's let Pedro go back to his normal life.
And that's typical of a possession, is it? That's what you normally do.
I mean, it varies. It really depends on my mood.
Right.
Sometimes I'll, possess just a very ordinary person, like Pedro. Other times, I might go after someone with a much higher profile.
Right.
Someone quite famous or very famous.
Right. Like, for example?
Kanye West. That's one that, from time to time, I've possessed Kanye West.
Slavery is a choice.
Yeah, that was one of mine. So, yeah, a little bit of fun there. Sometimes they're a little bit darker.
I bet Jeffrey Dahmer was one of yours.
He's not, no. He's not one of mine. And you should probably be looking a bit closer to home for some of the things that young Jeffrey did.
Anyway, we are straying off the point. Well, I know I'm sure in future episodes we'll talk about possession and we will talk about ghosts.
I hope so.
But let's get back to the kind of difference between the physical and the spiritual realms.
Okay.
So the first place your consciousness, your soul, will reside after physical life is purgatory. And you may have heard the term purgatory before. Purgatory is a real place. It's a spiritual realm, but it sits between heaven and hell. So think of purgatory as a waiting room. It's like a doctor or dentist's waiting room.
Or death row.
No, it's not like death row. That's a really bad analogy.
No,
it is. It isn't.
It is.
It isn't.
It is like death row. You're waiting. Essentially, you're waiting to find out what's in store.
Well, I prefer to think of it as a doctor's waiting room. So you are waiting for the results. Sometimes you'll get called into the doctor's office after some tests have been done, and he will give you wonderful news, all clear, nothing to worry about, and everything's going to be okay. Clearly, there are also cases.
Lots of cases.
The tests aren't quite as positive.
Horrible.
And the resulting news is a little bit bleaker.
You die.
And
next week.
Unfortunately, that happens.
Yeah, the one thing you probably should mention that you haven't mentioned is that the physical life will have a bearing on where you end up.
Yeah, I was coming on to that.
So, what happens when you go to purgatory is you will be assigned an assessor, and that assessor will sit with you and will effectively watch your entire life replayed, every single moment, every single minute, all those embarrassing moments, all those awful moments, all those happy moments.
Yeah, happy moments
and
too.
You will sit and watch that life in its absolute entirety.
And people shouldn't be worried about that process. Don't worry too much about it.
Some people should be worried about it.
They're very experienced. They've seen everything you can imagine.
And those things you can't imagine.
Don't stop doing some of the things that you enjoy that you might be thinking.
Or do stop doing.
God help me if I have to watch that back. Don't worry about that. That's
I'd
the
worry
assessor's
about
been there. They've seen it and done it. But I suppose for those of you who are listening into the podcast, this is a bit of a heads up. So if you are doing stuff that is clearly
fun,
immoral, and clearly not the type of behaviour we want to see in heaven, you might want to give that some thought and maybe stop doing it.
Carry on doing it.
But that's one of the positive things about this podcast.
We're
trying to bring information to the table that people wouldn't have otherwise have known.
So once you and the assessor have been through your entire life, the assessor will then go away, make a report, and they will present that report to the spiritual board. And the spiritual board is made up of God, myself, the Holy Ghost, and Jesus, when he can be bothered to tell.
Oh, that's very harsh. He's missed 2 sessions, I think, in his entire life since we started the board, and both were very valid reasons.
I'm not sure the World Darts Championship.
He wasn't watching the World Darts. He wasn't watching the World Darts Championship, and you know that it was a blessing that was taking place, and it was purely coincidental that the World Darts Championship was happening at the same time, and there was a television in the room.
All right.
Purely coincidental.
Okay, if you say so.
I do say so.
Basically, the spiritual board
because it's true.
will gather, and we'll read the report. More often than not, we will take guidance from the report and make the decision that the report is suggesting. But if there's any debate, then we will look further into that particular case.
That's quite rare, by the
a
way.
bit like a trial, and we will ultimately come to a decision as to whether that spiritual life will reside in heaven or in hell.
As you can imagine, the process does take some time, and
it does.
Given the fact that there are millions of people dying every minute on Earth, it does take some time to get through. But you can expect
where do you get those numbers from? Daily Mail?
Somewhere in the region of 5, maybe 6,000 years.
But we don't want you to think this is all bad. Purgatory is not a dreadful place.
It's not. It's far from.
Currently, the person in charge of Purgatory, you may have heard of him, is a lovely guy called Dale Winton.
Fabulous.
He is a super guy. He's done a tremendous job.
Amazing job.
He has brought a real
happiness.
I would say a great atmosphere to the place.
Yeah.
I mean, in the past, Purgatory has been a little bit dull, I must admit, when Mahatma Gandhi was in charge, and he was in charge for quite a considerable amount of time. It was a pretty dull place.
That's very unkind.
He brought some entertainment. There are game nights, quiz nights.
Mahatma Gandhi did a pretty decent job given the circumstances.
So don't think about it in dreadful terms. Clearly, there may be some concern on your part because you might be thinking about your life and, in some cases, what a dreadful person you are.
No, in rare cases.
Just use the time in purgatory as positively as you possibly can, because ultimately you can't control your destiny. That's controlled specifically by the spiritual board. So just enjoy your time in purgatory as much as you possibly can.
And that's a very high-level summary of what happens once you physically die. And I hope that was useful to everyone. Very excitingly, I've just checked online, and we've received our first question, which is amazing. So that's fantastic that we've got people listening, and it's great that people are responding. This email is from a young man called Kieran, and Kieran asks,
Hi God and Satan. My dad says that as long as we confess our sins just before we die, everything is forgiven. We therefore enter the spiritual realm completely sin-free. So why don't we just do whatever we want while we're alive?
First thing, before we get into the question itself, just want to point out that isn't actually Kieran's real voice.
I was going to ask that.
Our sound guy has decided to put an Irish accent over his question, and I assume made a very stereotypical decision that Kieran was Irish. Incidentally, Kieran isn't Irish, and I'm not going to say where he comes from, because I don't want people to try and deduce which Kieran it was that sent the questionnaires. But the long and short, he isn't Irish, and that wasn't his real voice. I just want to make that absolutely clear. Now, in relation to the question itself, Kieran, what your father is quoting there to you is something that's commonly known in the spiritual realm as the Catholic clause. And you don't need to dip too far into the history of Catholicism to work out why that clause was invented. But enough said. What I can tell you is that clause holds absolutely no weight within the spiritual realm. If anything, the actions of Catholics are frowned upon even more than most other denominations. Do what we've suggested. Think about the type of activities that you're performing while you're in the physical realm, as this can have a bearing on what happens to you beyond that realm. Don't know whether you want to add anything further,
yes.
Satan?
Yeah, I would. Kieran, just to be clear, in hell we don't call it the Catholic clause, we call it something very different, which I won't quote today. But the long and short of it is, it holds no weight at all in hell either. I've got an example I can quote to you. There was a man who came into us a few weeks ago, and he was an Irish guy, lived in a small terraced house opposite his Catholic church. And that church would run a confessional every Thursday between the hours of 2 and 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So what that man would do on a regular weekly basis, he'd come home from doing a very early shift, blind drunk, and he would give his wife a dig in the ribs. Clearly he would choose the ribs so that nothing could be shown on the outside. He would then walk across the road to his church, where he would confess to having punched his wife severely in the ribs, and the priest would forgive him his sins, ask him to say a couple of Our Fathers and a few Hail Marys, which he would do, and then he would return home and give his wife a dig in the other ribs. This would go on a very regular basis, and this man assumed, as your father has assumed, that his sins would have been wiped clean the day he left the physical realm. So just to be clear, he didn't get a free pass. He is currently in hell, and he will likely shovel shit for the rest of eternity.
Well, I think that kind of brings us to a logical ending for this first episode. It's been fascinating stuff. You've enjoyed it?
It's been better than I thought it was going to be.
You know, I'm sure this process will improve as we go through the weeks. But
You'd hope so.
I think it's been a success. Hopefully, it's been informative. Fantastic that we've had Kieran's email. So thank you for that, Kieran.
Thank you, Kieran.
I do reiterate, please, anyone who has watched today, please pass information on to your friends and family. Please get them to join us in future episodes. Subscribe to the channel. Send us emails. And we do look forward to speaking with you very soon. Thanks again.
Thanks again.